Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association Lunch and Learn webinar, Exploring Biochar for Colorado Specialty Crops Producers. I'm Adrian Card, the State Specialist in Produce with Colorado State University Extension and a founding board member of the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and I'll be your host. Today's webinar is produced in collaboration with CFVGA and will feature a presentation from John Webster of the US Biochar Initiative, exploring the science on the use of biochar for fruit, vegetable, impulse, and other specialty crops, with additional information about the federal funds available for producers to incorporate biochar into crop production. CFVGA is the go-to resource for Colorado's fresh fruit and vegetable farmers. We connect Colorado growers with industry, government, academia, and consumers to strengthen and expand Colorado fresh fruit and vegetable production. Learn more on the website and the social media channels. CFVGA is made possible by a host of generous sponsors and wants to feature its sponsors here briefly today. Here are platinum sponsors and gold sponsors, silver sponsors, and more silver sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting this trade association. You can learn more about these vendors at coloradoproduce.org on the Growers tab and view their products and services. We will take questions after John's presentation, roughly 30 minutes long, and invite you to type those into the Q&A box as we go. You'll be able to see everyone's questions. You can upvote questions, and we'll have a poll at the very end of the presentation today as well. And without further ado, would love to introduce our presenter, John Webster. He's the Director of Communications at the US Biochar Initiative. John, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'll pass over to you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Pleasure to meet you. Let me get this fired up and let me know, can you see the full screen now?
Full screen looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for joining us today. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present. Today we're going to discuss an overview of biochar's beneficial agricultural amendment, how biochar addresses resource concerns, government funding opportunities, and installation methods with some economic case studies to go along with it. And just so you know, PDF will be made available for everybody after this event. So if you miss a slide, don't worry about it. I'm going to power through a couple of them pretty quick just because we have a lot of content to cover. But having the PDF to review afterwards will definitely help out. And as we said, I'm John Webster. I'm the Director of Communications. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me any questions that you have, as well as to info@biochar-us.org. We can help you on your journey. So what is biochar? Biochar is a story nearly as old as time itself. It's an ancient soil conditioner. It's a way to deal with waste materials, reduce them into a durable soil carbon amendment for beneficial use in agricultural processes. Not much new here. We're reproducing what nature had invented for us already. So with all the hype, is biochar magic? The answer is no. But is it science? Absolutely. With over 3,000 peer-reviewed technical papers and articles. Not all the papers are good. Most are. Some are medium. But basically it is a well-studied, safe, practical, scalable material that's suitable for use in many applications. Biochar is absolutely beyond novelty. In the past, we're literally living in a moment where biochar has gone from an enthusiast practitioner environment and model into a full-fledged global industry. So the US Biochar, our initiative, our mission is to promote biochar in North America for the sustainable food security, improve soil fertility, environment, and climate resilience benefits. USBI solutions are, the way we achieve them is to fully engage the scientific and agriculture and biomass communities to use safe, stable, sustainable biochar through collaboration to learn, educate, inform, demonstrate, and develop markets, initiatives, and quality policies. So some of the things that we do, we have a number of projects you can see on here. We also do a number of conferences. I do want to quickly point out that Biochar, the North American Biochar 2024 conference is coming up in February. It's going to be in Sacramento, California at the Safe Convention Center, February 12th through 15th. If possible, please feel free to join us. So North America industry changes and opportunities, carbon credits have really made a difference. It's probably the way that a lot of you have heard about biochar here. So what that's done is it's afforded a lot of the producers that wanted to be in this industry the ability to finance their projects and get things built. We are now nearing nearly 200 producers and brokers. We've got all these new smaller producers coming online. We have larger scale producers coming online. And with projects in the 20,000 tons per day or per year biochar practice, and some even larger with a number of methodologies. There's significant interest in the market. Real quick, I do want to point out that one of the projects that US BI has is to create these things called fact sheets. So I would encourage you, if not right now, right after the webinar, to go to the US BI website, find that education button up there in the top corner. And it's right between news and markets. Click on that. That's our learning center. This biochar guidelines for the guidelines for agriculture application literally just published last week. So hot off the presses and very relevant to today's conversation. So the good news is that biochar in soil has many wins. You're probably familiar with hearing the name, but some of the benefits is that it has excellent water holding capacity, it makes it useful in drought mitigation, it improves nutrient distribution for both plants and soil biology. It quickly builds soil carbon and increases soil organic matter. It reduces soil compaction, increases till. The biochar physical structure provides an excellent home for soil biology. So biochar really is, when it comes down to its soil structure, it's easy to sometimes throw things like water and nitrogen, those types of inputs, but building the soil structure, we all know, is quite difficult. Biochars are made in different forms and qualities for different applications. You can see a number of them here. So biochar is a solution. A recent meta-analysis, over 20 years of research found that biochar can remain in soil for upwards of thousands of years. It increases phosphorus availability in soils by up to 4.5 times, decreases plant tissue concentrations of heavy metals, builds soil organic carbon measurably, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So biochar is made through a number of processes. The primary process at scale is pyrolysis or gasification. Here's an example of the project over in Stockholm. And then here's another one here, a system by Pyreg. So effectively what we're doing is we're taking biomass, we're exposing it to high amounts of heat in the absence of oxygen, and out comes biochar. There's also called mobile carbonizers. And so you're probably going to be seeing more and more of these in field applications as they become available to the larger market. The mobile systems are pretty cool. They're highly efficient. They can process up to 100 dry tons per day, producing 2 to 5 tons of biochar. There's about 30 of these systems in operation. They're currently used for residues with tipping fees, land clearing, orchard removal, and these chars can be used directly or modified as value-add markets. Another simple method of doing it in the low-tech category are the flame cap kilns. So here we see the Oregon kiln, which is a 1-yard system, the big box kiln, which is a larger up to 10-yard, and then also the ring of fire kiln. This slide's a little old. It's been modified a little bit to be a bit larger. Quickly, for those that aren't too familiar with biochar, I wanted to show you kind of some beautiful pictures. You can tell there's diversity in pore structure here based on the type of inputs that we convert into the biochar. Those pores are what bring some of our solutions. So water promises to be the 21st century what oil was to the 20th, the precious commodity that determines the wealth of nations. We have record drought driving interest in biochar. This is a study from Rice University. It's published a couple of years ago. It shows that biochar's significant water holding capacity can be a significant drought mitigation tool with savings upwards of 30%. So there are many markets for biochar, but we still have challenges for market development and biochar use at scale. Biochars are now primarily used in high-end agriculture, including retail garden, landscape, turf, tree, orchards, vineyards, horticulture with limited use in field crops. Larger chip-like chars are used in composting and filtration. Finer chars are used in growing media for forestry, arboriculture, horticulture, landscaping, erosion control, liquid applications, hydroseeding, biotic soil amendments, and even animal feed. Micronized biochars are used as carriers for biopesticides and biofertilizers. New developments include foliar sprays from extracts, micronized biochars, nanocarbons, and nanofertilizers. Biochars are used in animal bedding and with litters for manure management. Trials are underway to legalize the use of biochar in feed, which are already in use in other countries. Other countries have also demonstrated the benefits of using biochars in anaerobic digestion, and we're seeing the market in the United States follow suit. Biochar complements beneficial supplements. Milled and micronized biochars are used as carriers in formulations like these humate-enriched products. Refined biochars are available in large quantities in the West and upper Midwest of the United States, and frankly, nowadays it's available just about everywhere. So you can find it by a small bag in retail applications, and you find it by the super sack at a lot of your distributors. Biochars are ingredients in high-value retail horticulture. They're great for turf, tree, landscape uses. Rexius in Oregon and Kellogg Garden in Washington, California make biochar amended products for wholesale and retail use. So we're seeing these markets grow. Biochar products for environmental management, nutrient, metal, organics, and remediation. Here they're used in the Pacific Northwest as amendments for erosion control and leachate and stormwater management. We continue to see the increase of biochar use in tree care. So personal experience, I went to a tree planting this last year. I'd done a tree planting with this same group called Tree Utah a year ago at a cultural center where we planted 25 trees. The executive director told me that they had done a planting of 4 trees for trials, and that 4 of the trees did not survive in the trial, but all the 25 trees that were planted with biochar did survive. So that's very encouraging news as we see it being adopted more and more into practice. We also see the increased use for soil repair. This works for filters, fracturing, and wetlands. Specifications and best management practices are still needed to improve the use in these applications. The good news is that this is being developed more and more. It can also be used to remediate mine sites. We have a lot of abandoned mines throughout the West. It reduces acidity, absorbs the toxic metals, and helps out with the phytoremediation. It's also being used for applications like cleaning stormwater to protect species. In this case, we're keeping it clean for salmon. Tile drains. This is a real interesting application. We're seeing things like this being implemented more, and also with manure management and runoff concerns, because you can create these bioreactors, layering with wood chips and biochar for nitrogen and phosphorus removal, get rid of the solids. And then it also ends up making a wonderful compost. The good news is that there's strong funding support for domestic growth. We have a growing number of project finance folks, venture capital is coming into the market, investment firms, climate funds, private equity, and banks. They're all actively looking to seeking to back new projects. If you happen to be a producer or you've got a biochar project in the pipeline, feel free to reach out to me because I can make introductions for you to some of these folks. Government programs always drive markets. So we are allowing the free market to lead the charge, but strong stimulus from the government is fantastic. We have the US Farm Bill, we've got the conservation programs, the Bipartisan Research Network Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. We have friendly state level policy. We have bioenergy and biochar for BECS. We have carbon markets, industrial decarbonization programs, 45Q, and the US Forest Service Wood and Infrastructure Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act, this is pretty big. With the addition of this act at the end of 2022, the budget of the NRCS nearly doubled. It's estimated that acceptance rates for the CSP programs will likely increase from 1 in 3 projects funded to 1 in 2 projects funded. That is massive. 2 weeks ago, the administration announced another $500 million in funding through fiscal year 23, that's this year, with an anticipated $50 million going into biochar material in the projects. So the US government conservation programs for biochar. We have EQIP, CSP, and the CSP programs, and the RCPP. QUIP is a flagship program used to develop a conservation plan that outlines conservation practices and activities to address your on-farm resource issues. CSP, a number of you are probably already familiar with, but the CSP improves land that has been treated for resource concerns already and enhances existing efforts. And you can see here I have identified here where biochar fits in to these practices. Now, these programs are slowly being adopted. The good news is that there are more coming on board every day. Georgia recently joined. This slide's a little out of date. Georgia joined in, I think, February. Both codes 336 and 808 work with the QUIP, CSP, and RCPP programs. So how do you find out more about this federal funding? Well, right here, we've got the Climate Smart Soil Carbon Amendment Key Federal Program Drive to Ag Markets. Opportunities make an impact on climate change through mitigation and adaptation, which is the main purpose of USBI. Our goal is to increase soil carbon, sequestered carbon from 1 billion tons of biomass annually, delivering 250 million tons of carbon in green carbon markets. A key way that we're going to use that material is in soil. These programs, the NRCS code 336 and 808, pay the producer to install biochar in soils. Does not pay for all the biochar, but it will definitely help cover a good chunk of it. Is there paperwork? Yes, there is paperwork. There's always paperwork, but there are the 3 different programs that this fits under. It can pay upwards of $190 per cubic yard. For the biochar, we are finding on average that most of the amounts that are offered tend to be in the 150 to 160 range. It does pay for installation. It requires nutrient management program. And we have 2 days of webinars with about between 6 and 8 hours of YouTube videos on there. So I'd encourage you to watch all of day 1 that was presented by Michael Margo and his team from USDA and RCS. It was very generous of them to give us a full day. And then day 2, we have more practical application experience with the promoters there. Kristen Tripp's presentation is fantastic. And when you go to our website, the youtube.com/US Biochar Initiative, you'll find these front and center. So absolutely worthwhile information. So biochar's use in things like compost. Roger Cube of Stony Crest Farms said that he applied biochar. You can see his quote here. He applied it that's in a compost blend at 3 inches, incorporated into 4 inches. While he says he's not he didn't take precise scientific measures, that he saw what he estimated to be a 75% increase, a better crop over the previous year with the incorporation. So the use of biochar and compost does a number of things. Real quick, I do want to point out that I'm going to go a little bit technical here because I think there's a good number of you that are already familiar with biochar, so we'll cover a little bit of the mechanics. So with the biochar and compost, it greatly enhances the beneficial biological population. It increases the nitrogen retention, reduces ammonia loss, accelerates the composting process. In some cases, we're finding that it'll increase compost maturation cycle from 45 days down to 30 to 35 days. Part of that is due to the color. It doesn't help increase the temperatures, as well as the increased biology. That's really the big driver that gets it up to your temps, sustains it, and pushes on through. The other big benefit, especially depending on where your compost facilities are located, is that there's a tremendous reduction in odor. So again, how's the biochar work? What are we doing here? Well, the key is that the food nutrients, they stick to the biochar and develop what's an organic coating. So this can be any number of different inputs. So the biochar will adsorb, not absorb, so it connects up next to it. It'll adsorb a number of your nutrients with a temporary bond, allowing it to stay in soil for a longer period of time instead of just flushing through. That makes it available to the biology. It makes it available to the plants, giving an overall more beneficial environment for both the biology and the plants to survive and thrive. For best results, we find it's best to mix it with things like manure as it is generated. The biochar that's added in the barns absorb far more nutrient and nitrogen than biochar added after cleanout. And there was an interesting study back in 2022 from the folks at UC Merced, where they added 20% by volume biochar and reduced methane emissions from that material by 84%. That's substantial, because when you're not losing nutrients or when you're not off-gassing, you're retaining nutrients. That's important, you're retaining nutrients. So here we see the organic coating on the biochar surface. I like this, it reminds me of when I broke my leg and saw the x-ray of my leg. So, but composting biochar with other organic material provides an organic coating on the biochar, which again, located in soil, makes it bioavailable to plants and biology. Here's what we see with the types of results. So we see increased germination, we see increased secondary leaf count, and we see increased biomass. So you can see right here, study after study tends to show that. Not all studies, but the bulk of them do. And as we know, we're talking about soil aggregates, and improved soil aggregates tends to be the #1 measure of good soil. So, and this is how it works. This is a beautiful shot. I like to throw in the pretty shots, the specific biochar next to a vineyard. So what's our goal? Why are we doing all of this? Well, ideally, we want to restore the North American soils. So in Iowa, where you can find the richest soils, it's because the soil carbon is charcoal. It was created when those thick stems with the prairie fires would come through. The thick stems allowed for pyrolysis environment to take place, leaving behind just the charcoal. So again, pyrolysis you can think of it like when you strike a match and the flame is sitting up above. It doesn't seem like it's actually touching the matchstick. It's combusting all the off-gassings from the material inside. That's the same thing that would happen with the wildfires, leaving behind rich carbon to return to the soil. It's also a drought buster. This 2012 study in Iowa showed that we did better because the soils are high in that natural biochar. And again, test plots showed a 15% increase in water retention. These are the type of tests that you can do for yourself at home, so you can see that they work. They're repeatable in field trials, but again, like it doesn't take much to run a trial. A little bit of biochar blended practically. Here you can see a difference to show drought tolerance, skipping 2 weeks of watering on these plants, and there's quite a difference. So you can see on the picture there the with and without biochar. And in order to use biochar effectively, we need to identify management goals and our resource concerns. So we find a product that meets the needs, we find a rate that meets the needs, and then we move forward. I do want to point out, there we go. So as the science and knowledge grows, biochar selection gets easier. With tools, we can match biochar properties to soil and crop needs. The biochar physical feedstock origin and production conditions impact the physiochemical properties of the biochar in soil. We use principles from nutrient management to inform amendment strategy. Right source, right place, right rate. And the 4th R would be right time. So what we have is this new tool called the Pacific Northwest Biochar. And this is the Biochar Atlas. It's been around for a number of years. It's an online platform created to facilitate the exchange of information related to biochar production and the use in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States. It provides a comprehensive database of resources related to biochar, including manufacturers, suppliers, end users, and research centers, along with case studies. It's intended to increase awareness of biochar production and use and to foster collaboration among stakeholders in the biochar industry. So the good news is that the Biochar Atlas is being expanded. USBI and a number of organizations have all worked together in order to increase funding, to make it available, so that way we can develop and deploy a regional biochar data portal to facilitate better collaboration, data sharing, and public access to biochar relevant information. So we want to thank the Biochar Atlas and NRCS and Kristen Tripp, who runs the Atlas and who is also a USBI board member. So you can see here, lots of tools in the works that we did not have 10 years ago. Some of these we didn't even have 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and they're continuing to get better and better. The USDA Web Soil Survey tool is an online resource that's provided by the USDA to provide detailed information about soil characteristics such as texture, drainage, erosion, fertility, and more. Tools intended to help farmers and landowners assess the condition of their land, as well as to provide guidance on how to best manage it. The Web Soil Survey tool is an excellent companion tool in the Biochar Atlas, and you can learn more about this in the USBI webinar series we covered earlier on Code 336 and 808. This Web Soil Survey tool also provides data from the US Geological Survey and other sources. The information is compiled into an interactive map, which users can use to navigate to find specific soil types and characteristics when planning their biochar strategy. USBI is developing their own biochar calculation tool to improve adoption. We're working closely with USBI board member Josiah Hunt from Pacific Biochar. And what this tool is intended to do is for those who have already chosen to apply biochar, this is effectively acting as a sanity check. It'll include a number of critical factors to consider when applying biochar. It's currently a work in progress. It's being converted to a web application, which will be found on the USBI website, hopefully sometime this summer. Tools like this, it's very important to realize that tools like this will help rapidly scale biochar adoption and implementation in field. Speaking of the field, let's get there because I know a lot of you are interested in this. So here we can see on the right, we've got a biochar slurry application using a sprayer. And then we've got J.R. Bollinger on the left. We're going to cover different methodologies: strip till, no till, and liquid. So I do want to reiterate the USBI fact sheets. If you go to that fact sheet that we released last week that you can find on the Learning Center, and there's a link to it from the homepage that contains a lot of the same information. So when we're incorporating biochars and blends, common equipment can distribute the biochar. Some larger biochars may require modifications, but by and large, if you can spread chicken litter with the machine, it'll handle biochar applications just fine. Here we have the poultry litter subsurfer, overseeding pasture, applying seed biochar with a standard no-till drill, and then the moving floor bin with augers. So here's an image from Pacific Biochar on application in vineyards. It's applied down the aisle with manure compost spreader, which is later disked in, cover crops planted down the center row to build diversity and soil carbon. Field application applied down planting rows and ripped into the soil profile. The bottom row shows broadcast and no-till applications, as well as the slurry fed into the no-till cross slot. So this is something from 2016, David Yarrow down the wormhole with J.R. Bollinger. And so we're talking about application with road crops. They saw the 2.5% of biochar tilled into the 6 inches is 8 tons per acre. The way he was doing the economics at 50 cents per pound and $8,000 per acre, that it was too costly for farmers in 2016. Again, this is a mechanism that's based on no federal incentives, no funding through programs like 336 and 808. Biochar is still in about the same price per pound, where you can find biochar pricing that varies between 35 and 75 cents per pound, depending on its substrate, feedstock, and intended purpose. Again, the tools that we're working with, the tools that are being developed, are all intended to help you coordinate it with best practice. So, because it is possible to find the best biochar specific to your application. So, and as it was pointed out, his genius was to concentrate biochar into nutrients into narrow bands, and that way he was able to buy less biochar and still receive the desired results. This shows some of the application process that he followed, mixing sawdust fines, steam minerals, inoculants, mycorrhizae spores, Bacillus subtilis, kelp meal, fish meal, crab meal, humates, humic and fulvic acids, as well as some nit and PK fertilizers. So that leads me to the growing industry of biochar-based fertilizers. For example, the ag sheet that we're highlighting is our new fact sheet. A product like April urea with biochar can offer the most compatible substrate for farmers to use in existing fertilizer application equipment. Over 20 studies reveal that there's a 15 to 69% delay in nitrogen release and a 25 to 65% improvement in fertilizer use efficiency with April biochar-based nitrogen fertilizers. That's a big deal. You know, the cost of your nitrogen fertilizers these days, I looked it up, we're $450 a ton. So, which is, you know, it adds up. So now we have biochar on parity with your inputs, and the difference is that biochar has a much longer durability in soil. So again, you're building that soil structure. Here's some folks. Jason Malk. I don't know if any of you are following this kid, but man, he just keeps pushing it. He's got a lot of unique ways in which he's incorporating biochar, and he considers biochar to be a change agent. If you're on Instagram, look him up. He's easy to find. So, and that's the thing. We find more and more scientists, farmer scientists, more people willing to push the envelope, do these trials, pushing away from the status quo into finding new and more efficient ways to incorporate a holistic approach to nutrient management, soil carbon building, soil structure building, and we're seeing tremendous results. So now what we have to talk about, the cost benefit analysis. So does it make sense? The answer to this question, so the Biochar Atlas did an economic analysis and asked biochar cost of either $1,000 or $500 per hectare and a 10% increase in yield, which crops would make money? The answer at these low prices and yield increases, biochar use is really limited to high value crops like potatoes and alfalfa. Field crops like wheat, hay, and barley would not be able to afford biochar. For example, for wheat or barley to make a profit, you would need to lower the price of biochar to about $250 per hectare. That's not really something that's in the very near term. But again, you want to think about this. This is talking about it if you're buying it out of pocket. Again, with the federal funding programs creating tremendous opportunity, when you look at that the potential for up to 150 to 190 per cubic yard coming through the federal programs, this is a game changer. This changes the economics of scale and the economics of application. So just for fun, let's flip this around and look at what the yield increase over 5 years is needed to justify the cost of 1 ton per acre application rate. Kristen Tripp did this analysis in 2020, but the same trend holds true. You can see here that the high value of crops like hops and grapes, they need less than a 5% increase in yield in order to be profitable, while crops like wheat are more difficult to justify. This is the sort of information that farmers need to make the decision. Again, if we're talking about economics and profit, if we have the government programs backing us up and subsidizing some of the cost through the incentive programs, then we can see it turns into a real game changer and it's a real winner in field. So this is a study that's about from 2009, shows tomato economics with biochar from the San Joaquin Valley. And we can see here that after we look at the inputs from the control with and without biochar, that we see an increase of 20% we can see an increase of 20% in yield. There is a survival rate document on the USBI fact sheets, and that will go into that information just a bit deeper. So we can see the different applications through viticulture, strawberries, turf, and horticulture. With viticulture, we see large improvements in vineyards with soil challenges. When we have 3 cubic yards per acre mixed with composting planting with strawberries, we can see a 25 to 56% yield improvement with the same watering and 40% less fertilizer. Again, when you're talking about economics. In turf and horticulture, am I running out of time, Alan? Adrian, sorry. Okay, so I'll just bust through these. I've literally got 2 slides left. So our application observations, high row crops, tomatoes, peppers, anywhere from 15 to 75% yield improvements with 20 to 40% less fertilizers. Orchard and nuts, we can see visual signs of improvement with lower water use, remediation of root rot, and then composting, reduction of odors, and more ability to recycle organic waste. And then this is the strawberry case study. Again, 66% return on investment and Q&A. So sorry about that.
No, John, that was great. So much information in there. So one of our attendees in the chat had asked, wow, I can't absorb it all, but want everyone to know you'll see in the answered questions in the Q&A box. I said chat earlier, but Q&A, and all of John's info on screen now, where to go for more information. But the CFEGA YouTube channel will host this recording. You can go back and look at it. So these things are so rich when we get into Q&A, and want to try to, we've got numerous questions, a lot of really precise nuts and bolts questions. I want to start with a really high level one that both Rich and I are thinking along the same lines here, kind of high level net carbon sequestration. When we look at, when I think of like fires burning, I think about release of carbon dioxide, and certainly carbon sequestration is one of the reasons to think about this. There are plenty of others. If there's a full life cycle assessment done, do we end up with carbon being sequestered in the soil when we use biochar? In net, is there a net sequestration? Yes, there is, but the great response with all things biochar is it depends, right? So sometimes the question is there a perfect biochar? Is there one perfect biochar? And the answer typically to that is no, but there is a perfect biochar for the application. So, but when we're talking about building soil carbon, we can look at the vast array of field studies that have been done and measurements over time as we see an increase in MRV monitoring. So now that's MMRV, measuring, monitoring, reporting, and verification. We can track the progress of soil carbon over time. And yes, what we do see is we see a broad trend that there is a net increase in soil carbon and soil organic matter. And then we have all the knock-on effects that come with that: water holding capacity, nutrient retention, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. But yes, we tend to be, and again, it also can depend on what the process is that makes it. So in terms of the LCA, the life cycle analysis of it, depending on your process, it may take a number of years more before you reach the balance. Some of them you're gonna be in the negative, in the carbon negative or the beneficial column right out of the gate. So again, it depends. Great. Sure. We'll get into some more of these variability questions in a bit, but the another high level question from Seth is, how much biochar is produced per year in the United States? Even just a rough estimate would be great. And is the production concentrated in forestry areas? The bulk of the biochar that you're going to find on the market is made from either low value or waste stream materials. So that does mean that we see a lot of it coming out of forestry areas. We have all the beetle kill pine. We have a number of different species that are all suffering due to a number of different reasons. And so a lot of biochar producers focus on that because, again, when you're talking about economics on farm, any process that you have, you're focused on economics. But yes, we're largely seeing those located within upwards of maybe about 300 miles, because the more you have to ship something back and forth, the less revenue you're going to make. I think I'm missing the primary point though, which was, can you remind me of the question? Yeah, how much is produced in the United States? Oh, okay, so right now I think we're looking around 200 to 300,000 tons per year in the United States. Okay, great. We're going to drill into more of and it's growing. I do need to point out it's growing. We have that's based on our awareness. We literally have folks that come to us
that we don't know we're producing,
Sure.
and they say we've got 50,000 tons, and
Sure.
we're looking to move it. So
You bet.
this is a brand new burgeoning industry. It's really fantastic. So
You bet. Let's get into more of these specific nuts and bolts questions here. Um, the Leroy asks, does biochar raise soil pH?
yes, but it depends on how you handle it. So any number of inputs can affect pH. Biochar tends to have a pH that sits in the 8 to 9 level. There are a number of things. So it's that ash component that primarily tends to be the impact driver there. And if you look at biochar on a whole as a material, typically almost 90% of it is all carbon, and you tend to see somewhere maybe like a 6% ash content in there. So there are various ways that you can treat the biochar. So you can do things like some folks will rinse it, some folks will apply different applications. Like there's a type of an acid bath that you can give to it. You can do in order to reduce that pH and bring it more neutral. Another big key factor to this is you put it in with some type of biology, let the biology do it. So that co-composting. That's why I kind of focused on that sector. When you co-compost, it does a number of things. It's so you have those physical and chemical properties, and what you're doing is you're binding all those different nutrients together onto that biochar surface. You're binding the nutrition. You're building on that. Basically, you're building a valuable asset. I do want to add that biochar is an investment. It's not a cost, right? Biochar is an investment. It's not a cost because its durability in soil. You're talking about something that will last anywhere from 100 years to many thousands of years in soil, depending on the application process in land. So no-till, those types of applications, it's going to have much longer durability. So again, it all depends. Adjusting pH though is pretty quick to do with additional supplements.
Several of these questions are getting into, and we're into our waning 2 minutes here. They're getting into questions about application rate of it, whether it's compost or soil. And what I note and what I've known for a while, and you acknowledge this, is that there's variability in these products. Conventional producers have very specific knowledge from crop advisors or themselves about application, about release of nutrients. Organic soil fertility inputs or amendments have, they're a little bit more fuzzy about how those nutrients are released and when they're released. How do you have resources for farmers and crop advisors of how to make recommendations? You noted about rate and timing and amount. How do producers grapple with this? Given it's so variable.
And you know what I have to do? I have to say, absolutely go to the US Biochar Initiative YouTube page. Kristen Tripp, tremendous information. Her day 2 presentation starts auto playing when you go to our channel. That is absolutely one of the best presentations that you can watch. So, and they're all comfortable. You can accelerate the speed a little bit and watch a little bit faster. So it's a great way to get through a large amount of very useful information. But yeah, so again, it's an issue. So even though this is ancient earth wisdom done in a new Tech 2.0 kind of way to control the emissions and create benefit, there's still lots of study to be done. So we're in process. It can be difficult to learn. We do have these tools, again, the webinar series that go through the different tools and application strategies. And we do have, you can always email info@biochar-us.org, which is right off our main webpage. We will do our best to put you in contact with qualified experts that can answer your questions. Great, and again, refer to our fact sheets. We've got a second fact sheet that will be coming out within the next 1 to 2 months as the companion piece for the agricultural applications document. So again, we're doing more and more of these. The studies are coming through. The science is backing it. The practical application and farmer experience is growing. So, I mean, I realize everybody wants to talk to a farmer that's used it, right? It's hard to be the first person to use something. It can feel like quite a risk, but again, we are seeing that study after study tends to show some amount of benefit. So
You bet.
again, you can always do test plots. You can also find some biochar, put your hands in it, run your tests. You can
bet.
do them on small scale, but yes,
Well, John,
we are working to build those tools, and thank you.
thank you for being that resource. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we've put your website in the chat, and look forward to exploring more of the benefits of biochar in Colorado soils. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
sir.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.